Hi, everyone. It's Anthony Caparito. Welcome to another session of Conversations with Anthony. Today, I'm here with my partner, Anil Kumar. Anil is our specialist here at A&M in all things AI and IT. And we're going to be talking to you about a number of topics surrounding AI, how it's progressing, how PE is embracing it, and what we can look forward to. So with that, before we get into it, why don't I turn over to Anil to introduce himself, and then we'll get into a conversation.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. And thanks for having me here. Um, as an introduction, I am a managing director with A&M's private equity performance improvement practice. I lead the private equity AI practice at A&M. Been with the firm for 13 years. First, I would say 11 years, I was doing a lot of private equity consulting, both pre-acquisition diligences of all sort of operations, technology, commercial diligences. And then I did a lot of work around post-acquisition performance improvement, merger integrations. So very much aware with the private equity mindset, how they look at problems, how they look at increasing valuation or portfolio value creation. And then when about 2.5 years ago, when AI started becoming a big topic of discussion, we started building AI tools. So we put together a skunkworks, went to the leadership for funding, and we as a firm, we realized that AI was going to be very much transformative for our businesses. We saw the opportunity for AI to improve and evolve consulting, and so we started putting together a lot of product solutions and services around AI. Today, we have a large group of staff and consultants across US, Europe, India, and Brazil driving our AI practice and building a lot of solutions and services around it. Glad to be here.
All right, Anil, great. Well, PE is all over artificial intelligence in many ways. I think in many cases, continuing to explore, much like the rest of the corporate world as well. This is a very broad question, but how should PE think about AI and how to incorporate it into their life cycle of a deal, their overall process, and what are some best practices that you've seen that perhaps private equity funds can adopt?
So I think from an AI perspective, one of the big things we're seeing is thinking of AI more in terms of use cases helps. We see a lot of companies, funds thinking of AI as this big nebulous thing. They don't know what to make of it and how to start using it. I think that the real is we have a crawl, walk, run advice that we provide a lot of our funds. AI is rapidly moving, but the framework that we try to use is use AI where it helps, but do not use AI where it doesn't really help. And private equity is a very complex decision-making, optionality. You really need to be very sure about the decisions you're making. It requires a level of precision that many other functions don't need. So when we think of AI in the context of private equity and deal lifecycle management, a lot of it is we want to free up the time of the deal partners, operating partners to do more of the complex analysis, more of the deep dive analysis of things that really matter in the context of a deal, and let AI do all the grunt work of information gathering, figuring out the trends and highlighting some of the major issues with the potential target or opportunities with the potential target. So we internally, we are using our platform, which we call A&M Assist, on a lot of our diligences. And the way we use it, and the same way that we see private equity funds starting to think about AI is we use AI to go through hundreds of documents to look for information, for critical pieces of information that we would typically look at to form an initial point of view on day one and day two. Now, in the past, it would take a longer time because for humans to look through so many documents, it would take a longer time. So we're using AI to free up the time of our staff. And the same thing applies to the the private equity deal teams. So free up the time to focus more on the red flags, figuring out, hey, where they should do a lot more interaction with the clients, where they should do a lot more follow-up with the management and so forth. And that's really changing the way deals will be done in the future. It's going to get not just faster, but it's going to get better. You have a lot more comprehensive, richer analysis faster. So that's the way we think of it from a private equity perspective.
Okay, that's helpful. I know we've been in discussions with various clients about trying to be practical with AI. Maybe for purposes of this conversation, you can think of a few examples or articulate a few examples where you can contrast what was done perhaps in a process prior to AI and now how that compares to using AI and what that step in a process may look like. You touched upon it a few minutes ago, talking about obviously being more efficient, automating some maybe mundane tasks, but can you get a little more specific as far as this is what a private equity fund used to do, and here's what they do now, if they're using it appropriately?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you look at how pre-AI, and again, AI is still, I think this is the year when we are moving beyond pilots and we are seeing a lot of real implementation of AI. AI is being used in different ways, but generally speaking, right, in the past, before AI, you would have a very long data request list, right? And you would ask a lot of different questions and you would wait till you have a meaningful number of documents and content and information received from the management when you're doing a diligence. Now you can actually start working on limited information. You can start having a lot more targeted data request list. So waiting a week to start a more deeper dive diligence, you can start that on day one. You can become a much more faster and iterative, and the interactions and the follow-ups that you do with management can be a lot more targeted. Um, and when you're talking with management, for example, you have access to the VDR with the chatbot, really. So you're able to have a real-time, much better, higher quality conversation, follow-ups, analysis in real time. The other element is, we're seeing it in manufacturing diligences. You go in and now the AI can actually take pictures of the floor and comment about the floor layout. You go to these meetings and you can use voice to ask information from the VDR through a chatbot interface. So things are changing, but in a way, at the end of the day, it's faster access to higher quality information. And then the other element is, so this is where we are today, I think. And when you look at the private equity deal lifecycle management, you think of pre-acquisition diligence, you think of post-acquisition portfolio value creation, and there's an element there of portfolio tracking and analytics from a fund perspective. And in all those, we are seeing different various level of adoption and implementation depending on the fund size. Larger funds obviously have their own teams, they're building their own AI. Mid-market funds are starting to implement some of the more market-based tool, and the smaller funds are now starting to use AI more beyond simple information retrieval mechanics. But we are seeing changing. I think we are still at very early stages of AI adoption. But I think in next 6 months to 1 year and 2 years, actually, it's going to really have a pretty big evolution of how private equity use AI.
Okay. You touched upon pre-acquisition analytics tracking investment during the investment period. You've touched upon at the end of life cycle. What about before that actually all happens? Where have some of your clients attempted to use AI to streamline some of their deal sourcing?
So at the end, we have this tool, DIG, Data Intelligence Gateway, that's actually we use. And I know that the tech team that uses it quite extensively, and that's being very helpful to us. And the team behind DIG is implementing AI pretty actively. The way we think about deal sourcing element is now you have access to a lot more. It's not just the access and the data points, like what do you do with the data in a way that you are used to. So every PE fund has their own style of deal sourcing, what they look for in a deal, their investment preferences, their risk profile that they have to keep in mind. And a lot of this is very unique to the private equity fund, and that's how they differentiate with each other. Capturing that, what we call the private equity chain of thought, into your AI layer, and that's something that DIG does quite well. And then using that to drive the sourcing elements makes a really big difference because now instead of boiling the ocean, you're going after much more targeted, and you're wasting less. You're not wasting time that you would in the pre-AI. One of the elements that we do is it's just obviously we have with AI you can really boil the data ocean much better, but also implement that logic layer. So for example, if I'm looking for these 5 characteristics, we have a client which thinks about, little leader, for example. They have a concept of little leader, which is they look for small sub-industry sizes where the company is number 1 or number 2. Now that requires a level of criteria matching as well as information gathering that's very unique to that client. And on layer on that, they do not want certain kind of legal risks. They do not want certain geographies. So we put in this layer of logic, and AI can put that layer of logic, which enhances that. And not only that, it produces a narrative, a very cogent narrative as to why something is good or bad. So the ability to make go, no go decision reduces from say 3 or 4 days to maybe a day. And that's how the deal sourcing element is actually rapidly improving with the help of AI.
Okay, that's interesting. All of that said, and clearly you've just articulated a bunch of different examples that AI could be super helpful, increase efficiency, increase the level of insights. But of course, there's always some risk involved, and there are skeptics out there that perhaps, at least at this stage, they don't really trust AI. And they see hallucinations, as the term goes, with the output of AI. How would you respond to some of those skeptics who think perhaps AI isn't really truly reliable and it could actually hurt more than it could help? What would you say to that?
I would agree with that. Should never be reliable. AI will never replace humans. One of the things that when we started working 2 years ago, was a lot of the fear was, hey, will AI replace humans? No matter how good AI gets, what we are realizing is that AI will really help and make us smarter and better. And that's why we changed the name to Assist when we build our platform, A&M Assist. Um, the way to think about AI is you should always validate, and that's the training that within A&M, anyone who's using AI has to go through 3 levels of training. And we keep stressing in every single training, you have to double check, triple check. Any numbers especially have to be checked multiple times. We have source referencing, citation. You need to know exactly where that number is coming from, because AI hallucination is actually, funny enough, it's not a defect, it's a feature, because AI tries to help humans. It's designed to help. So if the information is not there, it almost sometimes manufactures it. Now, there's many ways technically to work around it. In our A&M Assist, for example, we've eliminated hallucination through technology, but still there's many technologies which cannot do that and which do not want to do that. The implications for us is AI is not helpful in situations which require a level of precision. So in case of our transaction advisory group, Anthony, as you know, we are very much focused on precise analysis, and AI is not necessarily fully there yet. And maybe it will never get there. And maybe the intention is to really help you make meaning, double check, validate, and always have a healthy sense of skepticism towards AI. What AI really does is gives us the optionality, gives us things to think about, and gives us directional advice, but it will never replace the precise nature of advice that we many times give in case of financial advice, financial diligence, and many times the operations diligence as well.
Yeah, that's great. And that's extremely helpful. You've just spent a lot of time talking about AI's impact in the context of a deal, from sourcing all the way to potentially selling. What about in the middle? How could AI help creating value creation opportunities? And where have you seen AI used in those value creation attempts?
And that's really the biggest opportunity for AI is value creation, enterprise value creation, portfolio value creation. AI's ability it can do a couple of things, but the most important thing we term is early warnings and early intervention opportunities. So an enterprise, what AI is helping is it can collect data almost in real time, and also connect to multiple different data sources. It can read PDF documents, it can read Excel, and paint a picture of a company's operation, safety, manufacturing plants, many different elements in a way that was hard to get in a easy way. And you can put a chat bot. So if I'm a CEO of a company who wants to know if there's any safety issues at manufacturing plant in Europe. I should be able to chatbot, and the AI should be able to collect the metrics. And this is where, we as A&M, because we have a lot of industry practitioners, this is what we've built. It knows what KPIs and metrics to look for. And then it's not just and we call it the what. And then the so what is, hey, if the metrics connect in a certain way, if this is this and that is that, what does it mean? Is it good from a safety perspective of a certain size of manufacturing plant in a pet food company? So we go to that level of nuance. It's like for different industries, different metrics mean different thing. But when they connect the metrics in different way, it presents you a picture which is, hey, should I intervene here as a PE fund? Looks like the company is having certain operational issues. And many times, when you look at financial and operational, even if the financial shows healthy and the operation does not show as healthy, you know that the impact is going to show up in 2-3 months. So having that ability to have that early warning, which allows you to do early intervention and correct and potentially intervene at the right time, is the greatest strength of AI. So not having to call all the executives to get the information, but have AI gather the information and present to you and send you early warning signals. That's one. Second, we are also seeing being able to find and correlate macroeconomic signals, industry-wide signals, what competition is doing, having access to that external sources, and having a better view of how the market will evolve. Right now, there's a lot of different things going on. Being able to track all those different metrics and say, hey, I think we're going to have issues with the supply chain in the next 2 months if these macroeconomic signals. So being able to proactively predict also helps. So, and that's all that goes into the value creation. The value creation is a mix of 7, 8 things, and you need to continuously monitor and react to that.
Okay. You touched upon manufacturing just now. Industry-wise, are there any industries that you've seen more usage of AI? And if so, what are they? And on the flip side, what are some industries that you haven't really seen AI penetrate just yet?
So I would say technology industry is going through a really big major transformation. I would even dare call it disruption because of AI. Um, if you look at a lot of the large companies, they have stopped, hiring for a lot of talent that they used to 2 years ago. Um, and part of the reason is AI is able to do a lot of the coding, requirements gathering, QA when you're a software company. And it's not just that it does it faster for a certain kind of basic work, it's doing it better because it doesn't get tired. It can do a lot and it does a pretty good job at doing basic tasks. So now there's the need, either you can think of it as a scaling or you don't need as many staff to do the work that you used to do. And that industry has completely transformed. What we are hearing, and even within A&M Assist, for example, we had a large team of developers last year developing our platforms and services. We insisted on using AI across every single life cycle. And the key for us was not so much as reduction in cost, was more improvement in efficiency. So today we are operating at 50% of the development staff that we had last year. And our velocity, which is the measure of how quickly we are able to implement feature functionality, has actually doubled. And that's the same story that we're seeing at many software companies and technology companies. Media industry is another one. With advertising industries, it's becoming more outcome-based pricing. So it's down, and that's the other thing that's going on from an economic perspective. It's truly changing the labor economics, and to the point where clients are asking for outcome-based pricing in advertising and media. So those industries are massively transforming. Some of the areas that still take time are very early stages, or distribution, supply chain, where when you think of AI in those industries, you think really the traditional machine learning predictive pricing, not so much as the AI that we think of when we think of technology. So those industries are still very early stage, but with agents, AI agents are more autonomous end-to-end workflow enabled by AI, and reasoning models are increasing. We see the majority of industries are going to go through transformation, I would say, in the next 1 to 2 years.
Okay. That's interesting. I think about some of the examples I've seen where clients are using it I would tend to agree with you. how about in the consumer space? And I know that's very broad, but any views on whether AI has been widely adopted within the consumer space?
Yes, consumer space is being actually transforming as well. A lot of that is around the customer service, contact center, looking at the trends and reacting to consumers' change in behavior much faster. And that goes into designing products, right? Merchandising, retail as well. So we're seeing out in consumer had already begun the disruption. You think about 10 years ago with a lot of the predictive analytics and forecasting, but those were more traditional AI tools, machine learning, which used to boil the ocean on a lot of data, which needed to be right. So there were long-term projects, but when they took shape, they were doing much better prediction.
Right.
Then came Gen AI, right, with ChatGPT 3.5. I think that Gen AI is more directional, problem sniffing, opportunity sniffing, but it's not precise. But it can work with words. So you think of PDF documents, you think of email content. It can read through it, make sense of it, and make some directional assessment of whether something's good or bad. If you teach it what good or bad is, that piece is a lot helping in the contact center and customer service, which tended to be driven. The expertise there was a lot of tribal knowledge, people who knew, for example, in consumer, what a substitute product could be if you could not find a particular product. Things like that were very much tribal knowledge, and now that is transferring into more AI, where AI can not only help client or customers better, but also predict, make a lot of the predictions as well. If you now don't want this, maybe we can help you with these other things.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense. Okay. I guess last question I have for you, and maybe this is more of a prediction on your end, but where do you see the greatest transformational potential in the next, call it 18 to 24 months?
That's a hard one to say with the pace at which AI is moving. It's just a lot of folks we don't know how what next week will look like. And I would say when I look at last 2 months ago, DeepSeek completely rattled the industry, right? I think when you look back 10 years from now, we'll realize DeepSeek was a pretty transforming milestone for the industry because it was not so much about technology. It was about the disruptive potential of AIs. You really have to take AI seriously. Otherwise, you could have massive losses or disruption to your industry. And I think that's the message that's seeped into the industries. And then we've seen massive uptick in a lot of the calls that we get from our clients. So, hey, how should we handle this? And now, obviously, you have to balance that. There's a fear of missing out. I don't know what I don't know. And we at A&M provide very practical, pragmatic advice around this is to, hey, do not implement AI for AI's sake. Build it for use cases. There's the horizontal AI, there's a vertical. The only way things will really transform is when you have vertical use cases, very specific application that helps you in the day-to-day activities. Otherwise, it's just a big blob of nebulous AI word, which people don't know what to do with it. I think to your question on the next 18 months, the way we take on transformation, just from a private equity perspective, the way we drive value and the pace at which we drive value and transformation programs. So when a private equity fund makes an investment, they usually have a thesis around the 4, 5, 6 things that will drive the company's margins and value over the next 18 months. And being able to implement that in a way that truly is successful makes all the difference. And there, being able to have those portfolio analytics, value tracking, being able to get early warnings, being able to intervene 3 months before pre-AI, things like that will start to make real difference. And what you will see, Anthony, is private equity funds will start adopting AI in a much more meaningful value creation perspective. You're going to see a leap for them. And then folks who are still sort of waiting and watching are not going to be able to catch up because at this stage, if you don't realize the potential of AI, it's risky. And one thing that we recommend to PE funds is one thing you cannot do is not experiment. Do pilots, do experiment, pick up 2 use cases, not 10 use cases. see if it works, and to really do a top-down push on implementing AI because change management is hard. Just because the technology is powerful, employees, staff, partners do not start adopting it. It really has to be a combined effort and really a big push to adopt AI. But the transformative potential of AI in 18 months, I think, should force people to start taking it very seriously.
Okay. And I actually have one other question because I think this is relevant too in the context of what we do. Our clients are looking at potential acquisition targets. We're helping them in various ways do that. Uh, one of the questions we get is how adept or how capable are these potential acquisition targets in adopting AI? There's an assumption there that most companies have, but the reality is many haven't. But do they have the capability to actually embrace it and implement it, albeit somewhere down the line, a year or two, whatever the case might be? But how do we help clients do that and assess that?
Yeah, no, I think that's the reality, and that's a really good question, right? Because that's what we're starting to hear a lot from private equity funds is, hey, a lot of the SIMs, when you look at them now, are putting AI, and everyone's saying there's rarely a company which is saying they don't have AI as the top priority. But just having it as a top priority doesn't mean they're actually implementing it in a meaningful way. We do a lot of buy-side AI diligence, and some of the things that we look for is, one is, what's the company's AI roadmap? And AI roadmap, how realistic it is. Because do they understand, do they have a grasp of AI versus human? We talk to some of the companies and they say, well, we'll implement AI to automate a lot of our functions. And we say, well, that's not possible because one, AI is not there. And second, it's not possible to automate everything because you do need humans, a good mix of some of the manual repetitive tasks. You could have more AI, but many of them you don't need much AI, and you should not have a lot of AI because then humans rely too much on it and make this. So we look at the organizational AI maturity. So we have a whole framework around assessment. How do you assess AI maturity from an organizational perspective? Change management. How serious is management at the top? What's their use today? Are they how many pilots have they done? Have they already gone through the crawl phase and are in the walk and run phase? Where exactly are they? How do they measure AI success? Are they implementing AI for AI's sake or for use cases? So we look at all of maturity and then we come up with a roadmap. We help management put together a roadmap, which is a lot more practical, a lot pragmatic, and it's aligned with where we think the industry will evolve. At least there's a clarity on how the next 3 or 6 months could look like. So as long as the companies are aligned with their roadmap there, I think that's the way to look at right now. So AI diligence, I think, is becoming a really necessary part of the deal life cycle. And also having a good AI roadmap makes a big difference.
Okay. Well, Anil, I appreciate all those insights. I think certainly AI is at the top of everyone's mind, and I think we have a really good vantage point here at A&M to not only help clients embrace it and understand it, but also really adopt it ourselves for everyone else's benefit in the clients and other stakeholders that we deal with. So the last thing we want to do here and supplement this conversation with some visual aids is go through a little bit of a demo on what we call AI Assist. So Anil, I will turn it over to you to run through a quick demo so we can give some pictorials here to our audience on what it looks like and just some quick examples of how we use it.
So at A&M, we've built a tool, A&M Assist. It's a platform that we use to help our consultants leverage the power of AI to gather information, to find red flags, and accelerate the first 2 weeks of analysis. Because in the first 2 weeks, when we do diligence and any work, a lot of time is spent on gathering information. Now we are teaching the AI based on the scope of the work, based on the industry, how to use AI to do that so we can do more deeper dive analysis. When you log into A&M Assist, what you see is a chat interface very similar to any other chat interfaces that you see in the industry today. What we're building is knowledge base, and what you see there here is a knowledge base. So in this case, we have many different industries, and we have our own expert view on industries. So for a staff wanting to learn if we have done and what kind of impact have we had in a particular industry, this is very helpful. When we can do a lot of projects and diligences with an A&M Assist. So this interface shows you, I could be doing multiple diligences. This is really a collaborative workspace where you would go in, and here you would upload a lot of the documents or the VDR documents, and you can start doing a lot of different summaries, and you can run your own analysis. So we have built many different point solutions. We have data room summary, which will, within seconds of uploading documents, summarize the documents for you in a way and looking for things that we would typically look at. So we've taught the tool to look for, depending on the scope, it knows the scope, it knows the intent, it knows what information to look for, and organize them in a very neat, clean way. So here, when you click on the data room summary, for example, it shows you all of the different information that you would typically look at, and it organizes them in the way that we would look at. You can also, these point to the citation, it points out to exactly where the information is coming from, which document, which paragraph, and it'll highlight the information here. Here's an example of that. There's also many different tools that we've built to support this. We have contract summaries, the way you get information from a contract. It's not just a simple contract summarization. It'll tell you working capital optimization opportunities based on how many contracts are not standard versus standard. So a lot of the work that we've built is using A&M's chain of thought to identify performance improvement opportunities for many different industries, using our knowledge base, using our style. We have very unique private equity related concepts built in. So for example, we have a concept of reliability score. If you have a sell side quality warning report, it'll prioritize retrieval from that document before it looks at SIM. So many of the concepts that we know, and we work with private equity, we know what's important to them, and that's something that we've programmed and built here. It's really driving a lot of our initial data gathering. We are seeing 30 to 40% savings in terms of the first 1 or 2 weeks of gathering that we do. And it's helping us free up the time to do a lot more complex analysis and more deeper dive analysis.
All right. Well, Anil, thank you again. This is a very interesting conversation and topic. And I look forward to continuing to learn with you on all things AI and helping A&M be at the forefront of adaptation for ourselves and our clients. So thanks again. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks.